This is Happenus. I'm Sean Hong. Welcome to the show. Today, Vedic astrologer Abhigya Anand. At 13, Anand founded what became a leading center for astrological research in India, Praajina Joytisha Institute. His prediction of the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic captured global attention, with his YouTube channel drawing over 90 million views, reigniting global interest in Vedic wisdom. Beyond predictions, he examines the connections between celestial cycles of human history through ancient Vedic scriptures and spiritual philosophy. His work reveals how archetypal patterns in planetary alignments mirror significant culture and personal transformations. Mysterious and indestructible, humanity has ever projected the arcane depths of its collective psyche skyward and marveled at what they saw across the canvas of stars. Our understanding of the universe affects every aspect of our interior life. The way we read the sky is the way we read ourselves. It's a mysterious and magical marriage, one that is still unfolding at once a mutual interpenetration and the fertile tensions of opposites. Anand and I created our dialogue around these tensions. Our conversation begins by exploring the foundations of Vedic astrology, how celestial patterns speak through timeless scriptures, our individual karma and capacity for doing good, and our relationship with a world that gains our attention and narrows the space for doubt and deeper questioning. On the back half, the conversation deepens as we circumambulate the cyclical nature of progress and prosperity in our shared history, the human potential and hubris, reflections on the Bhagavad Gita, and how Ayurveda's ancient understanding of our relationship with nature holds key for modern healing. We close with a healing prayer for those carrying despair, path towards peace, and finding treasures when we turn inward, when we dare to open both mind and heart. Against this panorama of civilizations, morals, and religions rising and falling, I find myself asking, and maybe you are too, what does progress really mean? If we measure it by the mere accumulation of comfort or the multiplication of choices, its case is lost almost at first sight. Our capacity for fretting is endless, and no matter how many difficulties we surmount, how many ideals we realize, we shall always find an excuse for being magnificently miserable and unfulfilled. But here's what I want you to carry with you from this conversation today, and it's also something I want to be reminded when I listen back to this conversation. We're not just puppets of fate or some sort of cosmic dust being blown around when planets dance their ancient patterns. Each of us carries within us the power of conscious choice to choose how we respond when we chart our course through challenges and possibilities. We are not just here along for the ride. Perhaps what this moment in history demands us is a new capacity for self-transcendence, both intellectual and moral, so that we may experience a new dimension of beauty and intelligence in the world, not a projection of our desire for beauty and intellectual mastery, but an encounter with the actual unfolding of beauty and intelligence of the whole, one that will forever be unpredictable. With hope, with grace, and with sincerity, this is Abhigya Anand. Namaste, Abhigya. Hello.
Namaste, Shanji. And it's very nice to be here today and speak with you on different subjects related to Jyotisha, astrology, philosophy, and life in itself.
Well, thank you for sharing your time with me. I sit here with a curious mind and an open heart, and we're here to go deep. So I'm very happy to have this conversation with you.
I'm also very happy to be sharing some insights and also learning from our conversation today and seeing what we can discuss, which is helpful to society and the world at large.
Yeah, I'd love to begin with your institute and learn more about Vedic astrology and Jyotisha. I believe ancient knowledge and wisdom can bring some needed light to the modern world by giving us the opportunity to, tap into the richer inner life. And so, what would you say is the most powerful aspect of Jyotisha and how might it guide us?
So basically, Jyotisha means the science of light and time. So it's a combination of understanding the light, basically, that emanates from different celestial bodies and time, and the interplay between these two and their effects on humanity. The basic hypothesis of this science, we call it a science. It may not be accepted as a science in the present circles of science around the world, because most of whatever we study as has to be evidence-based as per the present way of thinking. However, Jyotisha is much beyond that. It's actually beyond the reasoning of evidence. It is based on experience, and it's also based on meditative studies that the ancient sages had done thousands of years back. Basically, it acknowledges the unknown and the mysterious influences beyond the different energies we already know about and talk about today. We already know about, gravity. We know about different other sorts of energies. We know about electromagnetic, all kinds of energies, but we don't know about certain things. There are things beyond our present knowledge. And that is what Jyotisha goes into. And to demonstrate that, I've made a couple of predictions about the world before they happened, to demonstrate that there is a causative connection between celestial events, planetary events, and human existence, and our day-to-day lives, and geopolitical situations, and geophysical situations. Lots of people started to inquire into this and try to identify the source of these predictions and how I was able to make them. So I have been trying to explain the logic behind these things to people. A lot of people, millions of them, seem to agree with this, and they are coming with a curious and open mind to understand the intricacies of this science. So I thought it will be helpful to systematize the study and present it in front of the people in the right way, and hence I have founded this institute. My main purpose is to demonstrate the importance of being a good human being through astrology, because astrology rests on a foundation of karma. If there is no karma, there is no astrology. Only an action results in a reaction. So our collective actions affect us in the form of reaction. So for example, when something like a war or a calamity happens, when a pandemic happens, we have to understand that it is our collective action, or the collective action of those specific people who are being affected, that has played a major role in the event which has taken place. The collective karma of individuals, or the individual karma that each soul has gone through in previous births. And that is the reason for all the misery and even all the enjoyment that we go through. And this is the very foundation of Jyotisha. The timing when we have to experience these negative or positive effects is encoded into our existence from the very time that we are born. We are all supposed to be born at a specific time. The other important logic that the Jyotisha, or the science of astrology, exists on is that everything is happening for a specific purpose, and nothing is random, and everything is cyclical. There is a reason for every event. There is a reason for every individual. There's a purpose for everything. Unlike what we normally tend to believe after studying just rational scientific books these days, that everything is just random or purposeless, Jyotisha firmly suggests that everything is purposeful and nothing is randomized. Everything is cyclical, and every single living being on earth, be it a microorganism or a human being, or even a great natural catastrophe or a great natural sequence, everything has a specific purpose, and everything is timed and cyclical. So this is the foundation, and it gives a lot of peace. It also motivates us to be better human beings and make our surroundings better.
That's fascinating. Well, I'm interested in knowing how you get to study these events that can sometimes be either controversial or just beyond our rational explanation. What kind of specific instinct do you get in understanding how these threads of events could, arise and cascade with each other? I believe we have some sort of innate ability to recognize patterns of our own lives, be it consciously or unconsciously. But when it comes to collective events that may have huge consequences, to me, I don't really know how it can be done. Are there specific ways you approach in recognizing these hidden cosmic patterns?
Definitely. Patterns are very difficult to identify. It's like you have thousands of different threads, when you look at these planetary positions. You're looking at 9 different bodies, celestial bodies. You're looking at the luminaries. You're looking at the visible planets. You're also looking at the invisible to the naked eye planets, which are Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. You're also looking at the stars, constellations, and the ecliptic belt. On the effect side, you have so many different types of effects. You have geopolitical effects, geological effects, you have socio-economic effects, you have biological effects, and trying to pick something in between is indeed a difficult job. So this is why our ancient sages have given us a specific framework to begin with. So our ancient sages have given us a wealth of resources in beautiful and poetic Sanskrit. It's basically written in rhythmic prose and in a very deep poetic sense. There are celestial truths revealed in each one of these scriptures. Some of them are 5,000 verses long. Some of them are 10,000 verses long. And they describe in detail the significance of each celestial event and how it could impact human existence. We have to modify some of those things for the modern world, but they give us a basic foundation framework. For example, they mention that Mars is an aggressive planet, or its influence is aggressive on the Earth. So whenever Mars comes into a specific combination or a specific conjunction with another planet, we automatically have to realize that something aggressive is going to happen, or something very active is going to happen. If Mars is in a positive association with different planets, positive and negative associations are also defined in the scriptures. There are certain degrees in the ecliptic belt wherein Mars will have a positive influence. There are certain degrees or certain positions, certain associations wherein Mars will have a negative impact. So an example of this identification of a pattern would be, I was just in August and September, I was doing some research into terrorism for no reason. I think it was just an intuitive forbearing which I had, and I just wanted to analyze past terrorist attacks, because terrorism is just an expression of one of human nature's vicious traits, which is to harm others and to stoke fear, destabilize, to destroy peace. So this is one of the very dark forms of human nature. So I was just analyzing what is the connection between such sudden acts of violence and terrorism and planetary events. There must be a connection, because in astrology, our basic hypothesis is that planetary events do affect human situations. So if at all we are supposed to stand by this hypothesis, we should be able to analyze the influence, conduct a post-mortem study, and then see if and when such a thing could happen in the future. So last year, August, I was just working on this, and I just realized that in 2001, September 11, when we had the terrorist attacks, we had a very peculiar position during 9/11. We had Jupiter and Mars, the north node of the moon and the south node of the moon, notoriously known as Rahu and Ketu in Vedic scriptures, aligned perfectly in an opposition in the sky when this happened. Jupiter is some sort of motivation or a religious motivation. On the other hand side, we have Rahu, which is perversion. Combined with Jupiter, took the entire situation away from, say, just a movement to religious extremism and harm. And on the other hand side, we have Mars, which is a planet of aggression, which brings in all that firepower, the basic use of aggression, violence. And we have Rahu, which changes this to a very difficult situation. And Ketu, on the other hand side, Ketu is the south node of the moon, or the south node of the dragon, as in Chinese astrology, if I'm right. So Ketu brings about that detachment, total aversion and hate for a specific set of people. You bring all of these together in a perfect opposition in the sky, and you have disaster. And this struck exactly around 8:30 in the morning in the United States, New York. And I just was looking at that pattern. I was searching for when that could happen next, so that I can warn the people of such a situation. And lo, we had the same position playing out in October of 2023. So I was shocked to see the same patterns, albeit in a different sign, in a different part of the ecliptic belt. We had the same patterns playing out. So I was like, definitely we have to speak about this on the 4th of October, 2023. I published a video saying that this time there could be a major organized violence or terrorist attack around the Middle East region. And I marked it in a video and published that in 2023, October 4th. While I wish to be apolitical about this, and I stand by peace always, the very fact that we see aggression during specific astrological patterns, that itself makes things very clear. There is a clear connection. And some people claim that this could be some sort of a coincidence. But how can it be a coincidence when you end up predicting the region of an attack, the approximate timing of an attack, and the scale of an attack, and you compare it to a previous attack like 9/11? You have 4 factors aligned here. And I have recently challenged anyone who can prove this as not to be a prediction. And all of this also had a cyclical basis. This 20-year cycle, 400-year cycle, and a cycle of great conjunctions. So this is also a very deep topic, but with the help of the information that we have being passed down to us by the sages who have discovered this in their meditative journeys, we can definitely identify patterns.
Well, I'm struck by what you shared, mainly because there must be a significant difference between how you've learned to respond to these revelations versus how most of us simply react to events as they happened. I'm curious about the emotional weight, perhaps the anxiety that you carry in those moments when you know something significant is approaching while others remain unaware. How do you navigate that space between knowing and anticipating, especially when carrying knowledge that others don't yet foresee?
So I just feel like a doctor looking at an X-ray and seeing a tumor forming. How does a doctor feel at that time? You feel alarmed, yes, but at the same time, you also know that there is still time to tell the patient about something that is going to happen. And you can use this to show the world what the effect is. One thing that we have to understand is that sometimes some things just have to happen. It's an excessive load of karma, which just needs to be gone and which just has to happen sometimes. We cannot prevent certain things. We just need to learn from them, learn from those lessons and avoid making sure they don't happen again. So one thing is that it doesn't overburden me with specific anxiety. Of course, it gives me a sense of dread when I know that such a thing is going to happen. What gives me solace at that time is the scriptures, the philosophical scriptures of our Vedic tradition, which explain that everything has a purpose, everything has a time, everything has a place, and whatever is happening has a reason.
Can you share more about how Joytisha view an individual's role in shaping their own destiny and influence the world around them? Because I'm hoping to understand about the nature of our power. How much agency do we truly have in shaping our path and influencing the ripples around us? Like, what possibilities open up for an individual once they become aware of these rhythms? And how does this awareness transform their relationship with both their personal path forward and their impact on the collective?
Definitely. That's a great question. That also touches upon the very deep subject of fate and free will. I'm not sure if we can go deep into that in today's conversation, but definitely I would recommend all of our listeners to delve deep into the Upanishadic philosophies in the Upanishads. This will give a deeper understanding and appreciation of the world and how it works, at least from the Vedic angle. Every individual does hold the keys to their destiny. We have the power to influence what's going to happen in our future. However, it's important to note that the understanding of the self as it is very different from what it is in reality. We, as an individual, a soul, has passed through thousands of different births, committed thousands of different activities and actions, some of it positive, some of it negative. So it's not just this birth and this action and the reactions in this birth. What we're looking at is countless number of births that one soul has passed through to come to this very moment of existence. So whatever we are experiencing at the present moment is a combination of previous birth actions and a combination of present birth actions. And it's a perfect mix at times. So when we look at an infant, for example, dying in a ward-like situation, we think, what did that infant even do? It's totally innocent. Of course, the infant is innocent, but the reason why a specific individual is suffering, or say an animal or a cow or a calf, why does a calf need to die? What did the calf do? Just to be killed by a human, for the sake of meat. The calf did not do anything. The calf did not kill any human for that. So where does the theory of karma apply here? That might be a question. So the answer to this is that Lord Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, "O Arjuna, you and me have passed through thousands of births, and we have come here at this moment, in this time, and in this specific place for a specific reason. It's because of our previous birth karmas from different previous incarnations. We have committed so many activities, and that is why we are here today in front of this battlefield, and we are fighting with the odds of life." So One important thing to understand is that, yes, definitely we can influence our destiny in the future, but there are certain deeds which we have committed in the past, which we have to experience. And all we can do is that we can be the architect of our future destinies, but we cannot totally erase the effects of our past actions. And the very fact that we are enjoying today, for example, the very fact that we have shelter and food to eat and a place to sleep and a security and peace of mind itself is a great boon. And we must have done something good in our previous births in order to gain this. Similarly, if we do good today to society using the resources that we have, we'll definitely be part of a better future. So even anyone, irrespective of their socioeconomic background or their situation or their present situation, can do good. You can always do good to somebody. Even somebody who cannot do anything can at least do good to an animal. So everyone can do something good. There is no excuse to not doing good. So definitely we are the architects of our destiny.
There is so much to reflect on what you just said. And I love how our conversation at this point flows between the macro and micro. Listening to you reminded me of something I read somewhere which said the pressure of the past and the pull of the future is what makes us us at this very moment. And I guess that's why even in times where we are filled with dread, doing any single thing in our ability to feel like we're not being a good person and helping building a better future can be sometimes 1,000 times more helpful in maintaining that peace of mind, because it's all about the present. And what I'm also thinking about is how you started sharing these insights, starting at such a young age, and people come to you demanding absolute certainty about the future that will forever remain uncertain. And I wonder how you feel each time before you step out and share what you see, knowing that this too will be somewhere between certainty and uncertainty. Is there a lot of pressure?
Exactly, there is a lot of pressure. People, just because I've made a couple accurate predictions, people expect that I predict every single event that happens in the near future. For example, I'm literally expected, you could, in the comment sections of different videos or everywhere else, that I must predict everything. So definitely there's that pressure, because once you enter this field, you've got to demonstrate cyclicity, and it's not easy, because it involves a lot of work, and it's not plain simple like a cycle either. It's not that the same set of events are going to repeat because the same positions again. If it was that easy, I think anyone should be able to make predictions. It's not that easy, and as I mentioned, it's like thousands of threads bunched up together, and you have to pick the right one at the right time in the right place. Intuition is absolutely necessary to understand which specific thread we are supposed to pick. So it is very pressuring at times, and I find the sensationalization of my predictions also another little thorn in my journey of studying astrology, because when I make predictions, it's better they're not sensationalized. Rather, it's better they are understood in the right way. So when I say there's a possibility of conflict, I mean that people should pray and avoid conflict, because the risk of conflict is higher. I am not looking at a crystal ball and telling people that I see a conflict in the future and it is going to happen no matter what. Rather, my understanding is that the risk of conflict is higher during this time in history, and we must be very careful during this time. It does not mean that I'm some sort of an oracle, that I know that conflict is going to happen. So this is one thing which I've just wanted to debunk for a long time. It's not that I exactly know what's going to happen, but most of the factors are right. The accuracy ranges between 70 to 90% in most of my predictions, but people tend to expect 100%. It's difficult for any mortal like me. That's one thing, and sensationalization doesn't help either. So when I say, for example, in Taiwan, when I make a prediction that there's a possibility of conflict increasing, I always follow it up with a prayer. But when it's reported in the news, it's just like, I don't know, I just translate it using Google Translate, but some of the networks go like, Indian prodigy predicts world war in 2025. I never said that. And sometimes they say, Indian prodigy predicts disaster, 7 disasters, 5 disasters. They give a number because in human psychology, you give a number to something and you grab people's attention. And then you put vivid colors there, red, yellow, green, whatnot, and you give more attention there. So it's just a game of attention, it seems, after some time. And that does not play into my purpose. My purpose is to help people understand the role of karma and not to scare people and force them into things. I would request, if any media people are watching this, to present things accurately. I know it's important for the media to sometimes sensationalize things and get people to hear stuff and increase traffic and attention, but at the same time, it's important to convey things responsibly and avoid over sensationalization. And also recently I was asked very difficult questions by Taiwanese media regarding conflict. I prefer not to answer such things out of nowhere unless I myself feel something negative is going to happen. I've only mentioned bluntly that 2025 is a dangerous year for geopolitics. It correlates to two cycles in the past, 1968 and 1820. So people have to be careful, but that does not mean that it is going to happen 100%.
Yeah, I'm so glad you had the chance to share about these things. Before this recording, I told you that this conversation will be for us to know and hear you as a person, and people can have their opinions and judgment. That's fine, it's inevitable. But as long as we are authentic in who we are and have the right intention for our actions, I think that's enough. After the break, more from Abhigya Anand. And now I wanted to bring up an aphorism that has been quite popular in our zeitgeist. Hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. And in many ways, I think it captures some essence of where we are right now, how the societal conditions of a state, whether it's prosperity or stability, can affect the moral character of its citizens, which then affect the societal conditions. I wonder, how does that statement land with you, and do you believe we are in one of those inflection points where the tides are changing?
That saying which you mentioned, the aphorism, is very true, and it is the foundation of the astrological cycles as well. So when we look at these cycles, we see this playing out so very well. Especially if you look at the great conjunctions. I think anyone can basically map these cycles and look at the events. Although identifying this for the future takes more skill, just look at these great conjunctions and look at the events and you see how they play out. As you mentioned, hard times first, and that creates the strong people who come about and spark a revolution and change the future of their country and or their establishment, or whatever that is, their race, their establishment, their species, whatever. It rises. And then there is a period of comfort and prosperity. And in our Vedic scriptures, there is a saying that the goddess of prosperity, because we tend to, give the name goddess to anything that is, beautiful and amazing and energetic. So the goddess of prosperity does not stay in one place for too long. And that time is measured by astrology. We can just say, of course, prosperity doesn't stay anywhere for too long. But what is that too long? How to quantify that? And how to give it a time. So astrology measures that time and when things are going to be prosperous. Now, for example, the Western, the overall Western civilization is at that height of prosperity. It's reached that, and it's just plain now. It's just tabled out now, and it started off in the 1600s when colonialism expanded rapidly. They reached a stage of utter control over almost every aspect of the world. The British Empire ruled 3/4 of the world, and they reached their height of arrogance and pride. They enslaved large sections of humanity. They created misery. A lot of people do not know this. It may be an unpopular opinion, but the British Empire caused some of the worst famines ever recorded in human history. They tend to talk about all kinds of things today and become some sort of a moral leader of the world today, but the things they've done in the past are pretty reprehensible. There is such stage wherein there were hard times for Europe in the 1300s and 1400s. Strong men and strong people came together and created the foundation of their empire, which then grew in power, but without a spiritual foundation, they turned to arrogance. And they began to enslave people. They reached the heights of their prosperity. Today, at that time, India was representing 20 to 30% of the global GDP. They took over, they stole the country's wealth. They stole the Eastern wealth, including that of China and the whole of China. They stole that wealth and they grew to an enormous size of what it is today. Currently, it's just the way it is. But very soon, that is going to gradually erode, because you cannot have prosperity for too long. It's just cyclical. There is no personal opinion attached here, but you cannot have prosperity too long. It has to pass on to the next person, to the next place, to the next civilization, or it has to be reclaimed, or it has to come back. So that is coming back. And again, the third world, as we call it today, is experiencing a lot of misery over the last 200 years. It's just total misery. Africa, India, lack of education, lack of opportunities. And even China was going through that off late. China's prosperity cycle, when I say China, I just don't mean the People's Republic of China, but the whole of the Chinese civilization itself was experiencing a very difficult time before India. So it has to experience prosperity also before India does. And Bharata, India, will experience prosperity a little later after China, and very soon will reclaim its glory and what it should legitimately reclaim. So definitely everything is cyclical and it has to happen. There are hard times for each civilization, but guided by spirituality, I think civilizations can be better for others rather than, say, harm for others.
Right. And to expand on that a little more, I believe a lot of people would agree that, yes, a lot of human suffering happens every day since the very beginning. But at the same time, many, many improvements have been made for civilization to prosper regarding education, public health, transportation, and breakthrough of all kinds in technology. And I mean, it's absolutely mind-blowing sometimes if we think about how much humans have achieved.
Exactly.
And the book Factfulness by Hans Rosling, I believe it also touched upon these ideas on why the world in various ways is better than we actually think. And though most of the time progress and pain often coexist in ways we struggle to fully grasp, there's always a cost. And so how do you see this relationship between suffering and prosperity? Is it possible that they're somehow fundamentally linked, that one creates the conditions for the other to exist?
So I look at this from, again, a cyclical perspective. So yes, we are at one of the best times in history, probably not the best time. Saying that it would be the best time is just from our experiences and our knowledge of history, which is not the full picture. We might have had far more civilized and far more technologically advanced civilizations that existed here. It's a possibility that there were probably such civilizations which got wiped out. And again, we had another cycle of evolution that has brought us back here. So looking at everything from one linear perspective, that might give us the impression that we are at the best time in human history. But if we look at things from a cyclical perspective, it seems to me, humbly and personally more natural, is that things are not just a linear level of progress from a microorganism to a human. Rather, it's more cyclical. And there are, that aligns with the Vedic philosophy. There is great prosperity, and then there is decline, there is destruction, and then there is, from ground zero, everything again begins again from zero back to 100 and again back to a zero. There is one cognitive bias that the past is always great, but astrology does not believe in that. There were times in the past which are very, very horrible. For example, 2 world wars, and some people just before the world wars also were saying that this is the best time to be alive as a human. But little did they know that a world war was approaching within the next 2 or 3 years of that statement. For example, the Black Death in Europe in the 1300s to the 1500s was such a catastrophic incident. It wiped out nearly 30% of Europe's population. And then we had great cycles of prosperity for Europe. So I look at it more from a cyclical perspective, and we ought to be not arrogant of our prosperity at this time and moment in human history. Definitely, we are at the best moments, at the cusp of total digital transformation and ease of access to everything. We also have challenges. So we ought not to be arrogant of this moment, and we ought to be more compassionate and kind towards those weaker than us in order to make this world a better place. If not, our own delusion of our prosperity and progress might be the reason for calamity. So it's better to look at it from that perspective as well.
So one thing that I like about you is I'm stunned with how you connect spirituality, ancient philosophy, and astrology in your studies and practices, so you can understand the world in its various facets. And I would love to learn more about the ancient scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. And can you share more about how the Gita changed you and your way of seeing this world?
Definitely. The Bhagavad Gita was that point which totally changed the trajectory of where we were going as a family and what we were as an identity. My father has a background in software engineering, and he was working for some of the largest companies around the world. I lived in around 4 to 5 countries for 2 to 3 years each. Finland, Canada, Germany, Australia. Probably all of our, grandparents and the whole family wanted me also to go in that line and probably, go into artificial intelligence, information technology, machine learning, and this and that. From a young age, by God's grace, I had, some sort of a very strong memory. I was able to memorize almost everything I see. Like at the age of 3, I used to read magazines, and I used to understand a little bit of geopolitics and the flags. I memorized all the flags nearly. I used to be able to say the names of all the car brands at that time, and very interested in automobiles. I'm still very interested in automobiles that way. So, that was the trajectory at that time. But then my mother came across the Bhagavad Gita. She was also a semi-atheist when she was young, because she grew up in a family wherein rational ideas took the first place, and philosophy and spirituality wasn't encouraged much. They were from a business family in India at that time. So they tended not to give too much importance to spirituality or philosophy, rather just look at the world from a Darwinistic or, say, a very rational way of thinking. I wouldn't call that very rational. I would call that very closed to reality kind of thinking, or closed to imagination. So she came out of that one fine day when she was just going on the road in her car, and someone just gifted her a copy of the Bhagavad Gita from an Indian devotional society. They just gifted her a copy of the Gita through the car window, and she was just politely, she accepted it, just so that not to hurt their feelings, and took it home, kept it near her bed at the top of the, say, you have a little rack, right? And her bed was right beneath that rack. She hadn't placed that book very firmly. And when she was sleeping, she had a strong migraine, and that book just fell from there on her head. So it was very painful for her, and she felt like tearing the book right there, because when something hits us, some people tend to be aggressive with that object, even though it's inanimate and it had nothing to do with trying to harm you. So you just still, like, for example, when you bang a door or hit something, you tend to go and some people tend to be aggressive towards inanimate objects. So my mom was like about to tear that book. She opened it to tear it, and there was this verse which was very interesting to her, which opened when she wanted to tear it. This might seem comical in some way, but this is what happened. And she opened it, and she just felt like reading it, and then went through the next few pages, and then felt like not throwing it because it was full of wisdom. And then the next few days went on reading it, and read the whole book, became a vegetarian, left all bad negative habits in life, looked at life from a more open perspective. Everything began to change from that moment. From being somebody who used to, my mother is also from a Brahmin family. A Brahmana in India means someone who's on a spiritual path, but they were from a family who used to follow that but did not follow it. My father is also from a similar Brahmin family. A Brahmin family is basically, Brahma means the absolute truth, and Brahmana means one who endeavors to understand the absolute truth. Everyone born in such a family is expected to display or to display the acumen to be able to understand or comprehend these subjects. So despite being from such a family, as I mentioned, she wasn't having that background, but this gave her that initial interest. My father also was very interested, and my parents began to study the Gita, but since they did not have a very strong spiritual background of studies, they wanted me to understand it well from a young age. They never forced it upon me. They never said I have to go down this path. They never said that I should study astrology. They just left me to understand things on my own. They gave me the books, they helped me understand things, they gave me the foundation, because you just can't give a book to a child and say, do whatever you want to do with it. You have to give a foundation, an intellectual foundation to understand it. So they got teachers to teach me Sanskrit. So I used to go to teachers used to come home. It was a very intellectual and spiritual atmosphere, exchanging ideas, studying with different very good teachers. My mother decided to come back from Australia in 2013 because she felt that being in India is the best thing, and it's important to be with our countrymen in their times of despair and understand them instead of just being disconnected and far away and forget all the miseries. And also, it's important for us to learn from our sages and traditions which are there in our country, which are still there and not yet died down, and revive that in our little capacity as much as possible. So keeping this in mind, we came back from Australia as a family. We rejected the permanent residency option that we had, and we wanted to be in Bharata and just go with the tide of destiny, wherever it takes us, the grace of God. So we began to study the scriptures. I memorized the entire Bhagavad Gita in 6 months, because memorization, some people might find it a bit, say, perplexing. Like, why memorize something when it's just a philosophical book of wisdom? Like, why should you memorize it? But memorizing, I now realize, helps me, just grasp those verses in times of difficulty. For example, there are different moments in life which come even today. When I have a moral dilemma, I don't know what to do. Like, for example, when I'm in front of people who are very materialistic or very passionate about wealth or, fame, and you tend to get drawn towards that, because the world is some sort of a magnet, different sorts of magnets that are trying to pull you in different fields. So you get gravitated towards those things. But memorizing the Bhagavad Gita at that time brings those verses to memory when in such a situation. It helps me pull away from things which I find very difficult. So then I just realized the 16th chapter of the Gita. I would recommend everyone reads that chapter. I think that's the crux of the matter. It helps us understand the philosophy of the Gita, at least from a perspective of what we can do as human beings. So all those verses come to my mind, and that's only because I memorized them. So coming back to the subject, I memorized the Gita. Rather, my mother helped me memorize the Gita at every level, at every stage. And then she herself does not understand Sanskrit, but she was instrumental in helping me understand it. So I memorized it, and then I studied Sanskrit. The school that was very close to me, wherein I was studying Sanskrit, also was teaching astrology, or rather the foundations of astrology. So I was very interested in that. So I asked my mother, like, what is that? She said, it's astrology. And till then, all I knew about astrology was those Sunday newspapers in which you have those, little predictions for each sign. And I was like, this is all just pseudoscience, because at that time I already had a level of scientific background. I was very interested in microbiology and virology. At an age of 11, I was already reading matriculation level books on virology and microbiology. I was very interested. Later on, that interest kind of waned down, but I was very interested in this. I really wanted to be a microbiologist. So at that time, astrology was far away from my, way of thinking. So I was curious still, because I've always been curious about everything and open-minded. Tomorrow, if someone's going to tell me, see, astrology is a pseudoscience and I have the proof for it, I'm all ears. I'm ready to listen to you and ready to debate and see where we can come to some sort of a logical conclusion. So I'm always open and curious. So that's how I was open and curious at that time. But the people weren't ready to teach me there, because they were under the impression that I could not understand what they were trying to say about astrology. I proved to them by God's grace that I can understand almost every aspect of the mathematical and everything. I just need support and teaching. So I was allowed to study it. I faced a lot of jealousy and criticism at my early stages of studies, which is an entirely new thing altogether. But that was the journey, and I'm very grateful to be on this path today.
What you just shared about walking your own path, it touches something deep within me, because in some ways I've been on this journey too, trying to stay curious, to keep my heart open, even when others might not understand why we chase these deeper questions. However, there's something beautiful about knowing that we're each guardians of our own purpose. So we've been talking a lot about ancient knowledge, And I learned that your journey has also embraced the holistic wisdom of Ayurveda, or the science of life, which emphasizes on how well-being arises from harmony with nature and the cosmos. I'm curious about your relationship with India and this land with all its beautiful natural landscape and spiritual depth. Can you tell me more about how India has nurtured you to become who you are today?
Definitely, definitely. I think the whole decision to move to India was inspired by one very prominent, not only nationalist but also spiritualist. Sri Rajiv Dikshit ji. So he was instrumental in giving us a lot of wisdom about both Ayurveda as well as spirituality. He gave us the foundations of that through his videos. He was later, I think, I don't know how he passed away, but he passed away very early, and foul play, of course, because he was speaking against the multinational corporations in our country, which were at that time exploiting our country. Today, we have a strong government which is making sure that these corporations do not exploit the country, rather contribute to the progress of the country. 15 years back, we had corporations that used to totally exploit and torture our farmers and our country just because we were in a vulnerable situation without foreign investment. The only way to get foreign investment was to sign all sorts of papers, and we had high levels of corruption. So at that time, we had this amazing person who traveled lengths and breadths of our country, educating the villagers on how to be more vigilant of these things, and educating them about Ayurveda, and explaining to them how they have a history of knowledge and lifting their spirits and helping them be better human beings. Unfortunately, he was gotten rid of at a very early age by a lot of lobbies. So he was the inspiration for our family to return back to Bharata and to explore our culture and traditions. The old people here, the elderly people here have a lot of insights, deep pockets of villages. You have so much knowledge and traditions which are dying away. How to build sustainably. Today, sustainability is a buzzword, but sustainability was encoded in ancient civilizations for a very long time. Giving back to the earth was part of it. The traditional people always had sustainability as the first thing. Giving back to the earth and considering the earth as a living being was always part of our civilization. The Vedic suktas say that whenever we build a property, we have a little mantra before we build it. Today, the meaning of that mantra is forgotten. But that essentially means, oh earth, I am harming you by digging soil out of you to lay a foundation. Please forgive me for this, and I promise to replenish you with as much as I've taken away from you during the course of my selfish construction. This is the very mantra we chant before laying the foundation of a house in India. But people don't understand the meaning of this anymore, but this is what they chant. So if you look at it, sustainability and giving back was always encouraged, not only from a standpoint of selfishness. Today, sustainability is approached from two angles in the world. One is humans as a species should not go extinct. And the other is we must not harm the ecosystem and the earth, and we must maintain it at its prime as much as possible. So this is a more non-selfish path. But there are people who say, whether or not humanity exists, the earth will continue to exist, and it doesn't matter if, even the earth goes totally becomes like Mars, the earth still exists. So we're not doing this for the earth, we're doing it for ourselves. Yes, but we have a responsibility of maintaining the sanctity of the earth and its environment. And this was always there in the Vedic civilization.
That's very true. Yeah. There's a lot of discussion on intelligent now, and I keep coming back to something more fundamental, and it's how our thoughts and action ripple out into our relationship with our living planet. I know I'm not the only one seeking, some sort of wisdom in these challenging moments when both nature and society seems to be crying out for healing. Is there a practice or prayer that helps anchor you when the weight of the world feels heavy? Perhaps something that can help us stay grounded when we're touching that edge of despair.
There are lots of prayers in the Vedic system for every person, every walk of life. There's one prayer which I love a lot, especially in times of despair, is this one. Om Asato ma satkamaya tamaso ma jyotirkamaya mrityorma amritam gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Bhadram Karnebhyah Shrunuyama Devaah Bhadram Pashyemakshabhiryachatraah Sthirairangaiः Tushtuvaंsastanubhiः Vyashema Devahi Tayyadayuh. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Om. So this prayer is a very beautiful one. It talks about Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, which means, O Supreme, please bring me from darkness to light. Asatoma Sadgamaya, which means move me from non-existence, or say anything that is negative, to the positivity. Asat means negativity or absence of positive qualities, and Sat means positive qualities. So move me from that negativity to positivity. Move me from darkness to light. Asatoma Sadgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. So move me from mortality to immortality. Here, mortality does not mean the destruction of the body, but the destruction of your existence as an individual, destruction of your true nature, and the bewilderment by material nature, not realizing who you are in reality. So destruction of that to an indestructible knowledge, a level of knowledge. So move me from that to that. So that is the prayer. And then finally it calls for peace. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let there be peace to everything in the world. Let everyone be happy. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah. Sarve santu niramayaha. Let everyone be free of disease. Sarve bhadrani pashyantu. Let everyone see that which is auspicious. Ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet. Let no one be affected by any sadness or harm. So this is the basic prayer we chant every day in the morning, in the midday, and in the evening for world peace and prosperity. And this is our duty that has been encoded in the scriptures. If we miss it even once, we tend to do it again, twice, because it has to be done 3 times every day by everyone who is on this path. That is part of my religious work. Essentially, in Vedic philosophy, there is no difference between me and the world. It's all one. We follow the school of Advaita, which means there is no difference between one and the other. It's duality which creates difficulty in the human mind. There is no difference between this table and me, between a cow and me, between this body and another body. There is only one truth and one supreme identity, which is identical with the self. So in order to dispel that ignorance, we just need to supplicate it with love and devotion to this philosophy of oneness and divinity.
That is beautiful. Beautifully said. So near the end of each conversation, I ask my guests the same question on the feeling of oneness. And like you, I believe this profound yearning for wholeness lives in every being. Abhigya, could you share a moment when you felt that deep, almost inexplicable sense of connection to the collective whole, when the boundaries between yourself and the universe seem to dissolve?
Sometimes when I visit certain places which are very powerful and spiritually powerful, at some moments, of course, I'm also a mortal human being, and I'm also influenced by the material nature, all the 6 enemies of human nature, and ignorance, delusion. All of this affects every one of us, including me. At some times, that sheath pulls away, and those moments are when I'm in spiritually powerful places. For example, in India, the south of India, you have a very powerful place known as the Arunachala Kshetra. It is the place of Ramana Maharshi, one of the greatest seers. I would recommend strongly that everyone reads the books of Ramana Maharshi. It's an eye-opener, and it's so beautiful, it's so philosophical, it's so powerful and devotional, and it's directly from the Vedic scriptures, and his talks and his words are purely moving. So once I was at this sacred place, Arunachala, walking around the sacred hill. The sacred hill is surrounded by a lot of materialistic people, chaos, and is still such a powerful place. And it remains in that sanctity, and it allows people to meditate deeply despite the chaos around it. So at that one point, I really, when meditating and walking around that hill, I was forced to question, who am I? And that led to a feeling, a cessation of this identity, that it is basically the identities we have created for ourselves are all false. They might be pleasant, but they are false. The identity that I or society has put on me, that I am Abhigya Anand and I am this body, and this is my speech, and this is me here talking, is but a false identity. Whenever I'm in powerful spiritual places like this, for example, in Arunachal Kshetra, once more when I was at the Yangmingshan National Park and I was just staring into the beauty of nature there, again, the same question comes in. It says, who am I? But it disappears very, very soon later. But one thing I definitely know is that, and one thing everyone might have experienced at some point of time in life, is that this is not me and this is not my identity. What is this and who am I? So when we keep asking ourselves this in deep meditation instead of confusion, it's not a confused question. It's just a question of seeking oneself and searching for oneself. We're definitely not the body, definitely not the mind. The mind is thinking for something else, and we're definitely not the intellect. We're utilizing the intellect. We're definitely not the ego, the sense of this question. What is the self and who am I? So I think those moments are stirred in certain powerful places of positive energy. There's several of these around the world, which is why our sages have advised us to keep traveling and visiting such amazing places of spiritual power. I feel that sense of oneness and that sense of not condemnation of everything, rather acceptance of everything, a temporary feeling of compassion towards everything. Rest of the time, I'm just a normal human being. I do get angry with people. I do get angry at different things happening. I do experience all of those, wide array of emotions. But there are some times which I very much cherish when I'm able to experience the feeling of oneness.
That is brilliant. And before we close, I want to create space for something that might have been living in your heart throughout our conversation, but hasn't found its moment to emerge yet. So looking back at everything that we explored today, Joytisha, the ancient scriptures, our collective history, is there a message of peace or understanding that you would like to share with those listening?
Building on that power of oneness and Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one of the strongest philosophies of the Vedic system is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Vasudha means the whole earth. Eva means alone, is itself. Kutumbakam means a family. So the whole world is essentially our family, and there's no difference between one and the other. So keeping that bhava or that emotion when we deal with everyone else, there is a lot of kindness. And when we say everyone else, that includes animals. That includes every person from every walk of life, from powerful to weak, from rich to poor, because richness and poverty is just a matter of who has more material qualifications. That's all it is. So keeping everything on one plane, equality and oneness, is the central pillar of all forms of spirituality. And if we lose track of that, the purpose of spirituality is lost. Hence, if one has to be spiritual, one has to keep this basic foundation of oneness and kindness and compassion. That begins with a few steps. If you want the world to be a peaceful place, the first thing is to be kind to those weaker to oneself. Instead of complaining about those who are powerful and straining the weaker in the human socio-economic order, we must first see the one below us, not complain about the ones above us. When we are kind with the ones below us, the ones above us also, by a ripple effect, will turn kind towards us. So this is an automatic process, and it may not happen immediately. It takes time because we have already harmed the earth enough. We have harmed trillions of animals enough. So we need to go step by step and change this gradually. And the only way to be doing this is to acknowledge the teachings of kindness and compassion. Be more kind and compassionate towards animals. Avoid eating their meat and avoid killing them as much as possible. This will help the world a lot. It's not that if any animal attacks you in your own rightful place, you're not allowed to defend yourself. That's a totally different ballgame. You always have your duty to protect yourself and those who depend upon you. If you're a king or a government, you're supposed to protect your citizens, so you're supposed to help them. Non-violence, it does not mean shirking away from one's duties. But when you have so much food, plenty of food available everywhere, and in this modern time, as you rightly mentioned, we are at the best of human history, and we have so much food available, different types of food. So why can't we just be kind to the animals around us and forsake some so-called taste? There's so much tasty food also available. This time I was in Taiwan, and we have a great cuisine. In India, we have a great vegetarian cuisine. So I think being vegetarian is one powerful step. And if you're vegetarian, you create so much positive energy. The scriptures say it's more positive energy than 1,000 sacrifices or homas together. So I would share this message of peace. And of course, while we cannot create utopia, it's difficult to create utopia, we can move towards that at least at some point of time. We have to create progress because something is better than nothing. And it's not that our little deeds are insignificant. Every little thing that we do as humans has a strong impact on our surroundings, because as I mentioned, everything is one at the end of the day. A singular effort means collective effort.
Thank you, Abhigya. It was a pleasure listening to your thoughts. And to me, you have a heart capacious enough to contain the complexities and mysteries of ourselves and each other, which are qualities I believe the world calls forth from all of us.
Thank you so much. The questions were really beautiful, and I think it's the questions that lead to answers. And definitely, I think you played a great role in bringing out some of these things.
And on behalf of the listeners, thank you for your wisdom and for offering people glimpses of what lies ahead and what's already within. Thank you.
And thank you so much for this interview as well. And I thank the listeners for listening to it patiently. And thank you all for your time today.
And that's the show. If something in this episode moved you and you want to go above and beyond, share it with someone who might need to hear it and tag us at HappenusPod. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and visit happenuspod.com to learn more about Abhigya's work. While you're there, you can subscribe to my newsletter for deeper dives into each episode. Every share, every review really helps keep these conversations going. I want to express my gratitude to my guest Abhigya for sharing his wisdom with humility and clarity, and my friends Kaylan for a gorgeous original illustration as the cover art, and Sweet Shao for productions. If you're curious to explore more conversations like this, you can also check out previous episodes featuring the legendary conservationist Dr. Jane Goodall and Microsoft's research lead Glenn Weil. I'm Sean Hong. Thank you for listening to Happenus. We'll be back with a brand new episode soon. Until then, take care and so long.